Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the hidden reasons why building connections can feel so incredibly exhausting for some of us. You know, for a lot of people, socializing is as natural as breathing, but for others, it's like trying to solve a giant, complicated puzzle. So let's look beneath the surface and unpack the psychology behind why friendship just isn't always easy. Look, if you've ever found yourself doom scrolling through a Reddit thread, reading posts from adults in their mid-20s, 30s, or beyond, asking why they have literally zero friends, well, you know the silent pain of feeling like you're the problem. You see everyone else forming casual bonds at work or laughing at parties, and you're just standing on the edges wondering, what exactly am I doing wrong here? Well, today we're going to undergo a complete paradigm shift. Here is the absolute truth. You are not antisocial, you are not broken, and you are definitely not alone in this. Your mind simply processes social interactions, emotions, and your environment much more deeply and protectively than the average person. All right, let's start with Section 1, the over-monitoring mind. We'll explore why conversations feel like a performance and why casual interactions often feel like walking a tightrope without a net. Think about the concept of self-monitoring overload. Instead of just letting a conversation flow naturally, your brain is basically running a constant, exhausting internal audit. You're evaluating every single word and gesture in real time. You're thinking, did that joke land? Am I standing weird? Wait, am I talking way too much? This intense self-awareness literally filters out your natural warmth and spontaneity, mostly because a huge chunk of your attention is trapped inside your own head. So it plays out exactly like this. First, you have the conversation. Second, you run that brutal internal audit. And third, the inevitable emotional drain. This relentless overthinking loop is exactly why you can leave a totally simple, seemingly pleasant social event feeling completely, 100% mentally depleted. It turns casual chatter into seriously hard work. Now, that internal audit is heavily fueled by what psychologists call the spotlight effect. And here's a fun fact for you. Studies actually show that people notice our flaws about half as much as we think they do. So while you're agonizing over perceived mistakes, like replaying that one awkward pause from 3 days ago, most people are entirely focused on their own performance. They're just not judging yours. They literally do not notice the things you are sweating over. But because your brain assumes you're constantly being evaluated, you experience this intense fear of negative evaluation. To protect yourself from embarrassment, you pull back. You hold parts of yourself back. And it's not because you're being fake. It's simply because exposing your true self feels way too vulnerable to judgment. Safety kills connection. But to your nervous system, safety is the #1 priority. Moving right along to Section 2, the authenticity filter. Let's talk about why small talk feels like just plain noise and why forcing a polite smile feels like an absolute waste of your energy. Let's contrast these two approaches to socializing. Surface-level bonding relies on speed, polite harmony, and keeping up appearances. But your mind? It fundamentally craves deep emotional resonance, shared meaning, and vulnerability. You want to talk about big ideas, life purpose, real feelings, not just the weather. Small talk isn't just boring to you. To your brain, it actively feels like static noise. So here's an absolutely crucial point. As your self-awareness increases, your tolerance for inauthentic behavior drops to 0. Because you instantly pick up on subtle tone shifts, hidden agendas, or insincerity, your social interest completely shuts down when people aren't being genuine. You notice who smiles to your face but talks behind someone else's back. Your brain sees the performance, and it just rejects it. Which leads us to this profound realization: silence feels safer than shallow connection. When you're surrounded by people who require you to play a role or pretend to be someone you aren't, choosing solitude is actually a brilliant way your system preserves its peace. You would much rather be alone than spend another minute faking it. Psychologists actually have a name for this feeling. It's called social incongruence. It happens when your humor, your interests, or your way of thinking simply do not match the room. When you consistently feel out of sync with your environment, you quickly learn that distance is a much, much safer choice than the pain of being fundamentally misunderstood. All right, Section 3, the protective shield. Let's look at how past pain silently builds invisible emotional walls that block the very closeness you want. This sequence is incredibly common. Say you were excluded in childhood or betrayed by someone you really trusted. Well, your nervous system remembers that. Past rejection leads to unconscious guarding, which creates perceived distance. You always keep your emotional exits open. The tragic irony here is that other people sense this hesitation, and that perceived distance prevents them from ever getting close. But hey, this protective shield, it actually comes with a massive superpower called low social dependency. People often mistake your independence for loneliness, but being able to entertain your own thoughts, solve problems by yourself, and validate your own self-worth without needing a crowd cheering you on, that is an incredible psychological strength. There is a catch, though. When that independence goes too far, it turns into avoidant coping. You start relying entirely on being independent to stay safe from disappointment. But friendship requires mutual reliance. If you never ask for help or never let your guard down, people never get the bonding experience of feeling needed by you. Interdependence, not just independence, is the key here. And this brings us to a stark biological reality regarding your social battery. Extroverts gain energy in crowds, but because your highly sensitive nervous system processes massive amounts of emotional data all at once, tone, body language, emotional shifts, your battery drains incredibly fast. For you, alone time is a biological maintenance requirement to reset your system. It's for sure not a luxury. Section 4. External roadblocks. Beyond the deep psychology, we have to acknowledge the practical, real-world obstacles to connection pointed out by experts in psychology today. Sometimes the friction is just life. Are you living in an isolated rural area? Have you moved around frequently? Maybe you have a somewhat unrealistic romanticized notion that all friendships have to be absolutely perfect all the time. Or maybe your time management just makes prioritizing connection feel like a heavy burden. These are real, tangible barriers we have to consider. We also have to do a little self-reflection here. It's crucial to examine if our own behaviors are creating these roadblocks. Are internal feelings of inadequacy making you pull away? Or, on the flip side, are you maybe insisting on calling all the shots and inadvertently pushing potential friends away with a fiercely independent communication style? Let's bring this all together with Section 5, finding your people. Because, spoiler alert, you are not failing. You are just selective. I absolutely love this phrase, you don't collect friends, you build bonds. Your depth, your sensitivity, and your rich inner world mean that your friendships probably won't be loud, and they might not be super frequent. But when you do finally let someone in, those connections are going to be intensely loyal, deeply thoughtful, and incredibly lasting. Too often, we mistake a lack of compatibility for a lack of ability. Listen to me, you are not bad at making friends. The kind of deep, authentic friendship you require is just highly selective and quite rare. You don't need to try harder to fit in everywhere. You might simply have been looking in the wrong places, surrounded by people who just don't speak your emotional language. So once you understand your own psychological patterns, your self-monitoring, your need for authenticity, your protective shields, you can finally stop blaming yourself. I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Are you ready to stop forcing yourself into rooms where you have to shrink and start seeking out those rare, authentic connections you're truly built for? Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and I hope it completely changes how you see your social world.